another 50K. I've done a 50 miler in March of this year, but this is my first ever sanctioned 50K. And as you guys know, I signed up for it super duper last minute, like 2-3 days beforehand. So I went into this race knowing that this was gonna be a training run for Leadville 100. So with that in mind, I wanted to make sure that I was also giving this race my best. So here's how it went. The super steep, rocky part, this is what we're currently climbing up, just like riverbed basically. So keep going up this for like 2,000 feet. Let's go. Woo! Gorgeous. Big climb done. Good job. The statistics for this ultra marathon were that it was a 50K with almost 6K elevation gain. So we were running the race between 5,400 and 7,300 feet elevation. So there was a lot of ups and downs. The race was structured as 3 different loops. We had the same start as finish, but we did 3 internal loops that were actually all different, which was really cool. With a looped course, oftentimes the loops are the exact same, which I liked the variation in this. So we actually went out for the first 11.5 miles, we had no aid stations. But once we met the first aid station, this was actually the same aid station that we hit every single time. So I was able to meet Brennik at the same aid station from start to finish. We hit the aid station 3 times and then returned to the finish.
Got it.
I put ice water.
That was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Do you want any soda? I'm okay. I'm actually just gonna do ice water.
I hit the first aid station at 11.5 miles. And I hit it about 25 minutes ahead of schedule. So my thought process was like, I'm gonna get into this aid station within like the 2:45-ish mark, and I was way ahead of schedule. I took that aid station very seriously, took my pack off, refilled my bladder with 1 liter of water, added 2 scoops of electrolytes, which was 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and grabbed a couple more gels on the go.
Oh, you're the best, Brennik. Thank you. That was a heck of a climb. But
a lot of terrain.
Yeah, the terrain was rough, but honestly, like this last downhill section is super fast. I was hitting like 730s.
Damn.
Going downhill, and I was like, am I gonna regret this?
Yeah.
Guess we'll see. I've been really good about staying on top of nutrition, so. Oh, a little salty here.
Something really cool that I did for this race that I'll definitely be emulating in the future is I actually brought a refillable flask, so just a normal water flask, and I put 6 Go gels in that flask. This allowed me to be able to fuel super effectively on the go and get 6 gels in with literally just 1 container that I didn't have to have any garbage with. I just found to be really, really convenient. It's definitely something that I'm going to continue doing for future races. The first loop of the race had the most elevation gain. It was the longest without any water or aid station access, and also was the most technical. So we gained about I believe it was 2,800 feet within the first 11.5 miles, a lot of it being on old riverbed. So a portion of the race that we had to do climbing up old riverbed was, I would say, probably one of the biggest butt kickers, and we hit that right around mile 3. The first 1 to 2 miles, I had planned to go out very conservatively, but I'm not gonna lie, I went out super, super hot. And the reasoning behind that was I wanted to get ahead of the majority of the middle of the pack and the back of the pack before we hit single track trail. We had a large portion of the trail on single track, which if you're unfamiliar of what single track is, it's just basically what it sounds like. There's not really a lot of room for passing on a single track trail, and especially if you're going uphill, it can cause a lot of congestion. So my goal was to avoid that, and I definitely did that, but I remember looking down at my watch mile 2 and being like, oh my gosh, we're going 7:15 on trail, I need to cool it down. So within the first 1 to 2 miles, I made that adjustment, kind of held back, but still stayed with the front of the pack.
Yeah, I was way ahead of schedule I was kind of thinking like 2:45.
Yeah, I was thinking you were gonna be here later, and then you texted me the 8, and I was like, holy shit, flying.
I was very happy with that. At one point, my heart rate was like 185.
Really?
I was like, Amanda, chill.
The second loop was shorter than the first loop, but I think the climb in the second loop was harder than the first. And the reasoning was just the terrain that we were going up and the steepness of the hill was insane. I remember having a couple of racers behind me, and I kept looking back and telling them like, good job, we got this. And one guy was like, oh my gosh, is this never ending or what?
Good job, man.
Thank you.
How's that terrain?
It's pretty good. The climbs are pretty rolly, gnarly, rocky, loose. It's a little tough. It's getting warm. Please.
And I've talked about this before, but the mountains are such a great equalizer, and everyone gets humbled on the mountains. So whether you're a seasoned ultra runner, brand new to running, you run in college, being in the mountains and running the mountains will always be an equalizer, no matter what. At my second stop at the aid station, I asked a volunteer where to go for the third lap. That was something that was a little bit confusing about this race, was just the organization was a little bit lacking, just wasn't super clear where we needed to go. So I was really glad that I asked the volunteer where to go, filled my bladder back up once again with 1 liter of water, added 2 scoops of electrolytes, and decided to bring my poles for that third lap. This was the lap that I was really trying to decide whether or not to bring my poles on. Because there was only 800 feet of elevation gain in this loop, I was kind of hesitant to bring them, but I'm super glad that I did, just to allow myself a little bit more practice with that.
That one was steeper? Really?
Yeah. Crazy. It was so steep. I'm so glad I brought my poles for a second loop. I think I'm gonna hang on to them and just stash them.
Yeah, what's his name took his?
Oh, Shane?
Yeah.
Okay. This first 17 and a half miles, no joke. But I'm feeling not too bad, so I'm kind of like in the zone now. So.
And cloud cover is making it
oh my
better
gosh,
too.
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
And then this section is 6 miles.
4.8.
Oh my god, oh, I shouldn't have taken so much water. I might not refill on the next loop. All right, let's go.
The third loop was an annoying grade. And when I say annoying, I mean like it was steep enough to make your heart rate rise, but not steep enough to make you feel like you needed a power hike. But if you continue to run up it, it could cause your heart rate to spike. So it just was like that annoying grade. And if you're an ultra runner or trail runner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I did power hike a large percentage of this of the climbs in this section, just due to the fact that I knew that I wanted to keep my heart rate semi-controlled, and also the fact that we still had 10, 12 more miles after this loop.
This is when the race really starts for me, because we're past the 17.5 mile mark, 3.5 hours in, so it's good. Sharpen the iron. Climbs are literally, no joke, at least on that last section, it was so steep. Crazy. Perfect practice though.
So after finishing the third loop, we were well into the last third of the race. At the third aid station stop, I decided to pull out some aces in the hole. So I took some caffeine, I took a Celsius pack, which if you don't know what that is, basically just like an energy drink powder. Took 2 Tylenol to get me through the last portion of the race and was well on my way. Even if this didn't physically do anything for me, I think mentally it allowed me to just have a little bit more placebo boost of energy going into the last third.
Holy heck. That is brutal. Tylenol and caffeine. I don't see you until the end, so.
Yep.
Caffeine. The ace in the hole right here. Oh, should probably take my.
We've never done anything like this, so we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into.
Okay, so we are 22 and a half in, 4.5 hours. Most of the gain, actually, large majority of the gain's over. So I dropped my poles, just kind of chugging along till the finish. I'm not feeling horrible. Could probably feel better, but it's okay. Last stretch. Caffeine in my system, ready to roll. sort of.
I felt more annoying grades going uphill, and I decided to just kind of push this last third.
All right, last like 5.5 miles. Having fun on these mountain biking trails. Wow.
At mile 25, I remember seeing a spectator come up from the finish, and he told me that I was in first place. And this was the first time that I had heard someone tell me this, and it honestly, it just lit me on fire. I gave myself a moment to just be super excited about it, and then I contained myself knowing that there was still, you know, 6+ miles in the books. The last 4 miles, I had held sub 10-minute miles, which is, once again, super fast for me. But I finished really strong. I actually held 6:12 for the last 200 meters of the race.
Dude, so how was that? That last 4 miles was awful, wasn't it?
It was hot.
It was so hot.
But it was honestly downhill, so
yeah.
It felt pretty good. Oh my gosh, that was hard.
It was hard.
That was hard.
I
That
like
was so much vert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Verti, that's actually pretty good for Leadville training though.
What did you think about that second loop climb? Like right in the middle.
It was harder than the first one.
Wasn't it?
It was steeper.
Yeah, and it was super loose.
Super loose. I was like, am I like a baby deer right now? I'm like all the way up. I was like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was bad.
How was it?
Awesome, so
Were you one of the ones that got lost?
I was like a Nazi about my GPS.
Oh, okay, good.
Because
I heard there was a female 50K out there that got lost and
Oh no.
wandering around, not happy.
do we know what I
Pretty sure you're first. I'll have to double check once the timer comes back because I got to use it on my end. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you're first.
That's awesome.
Nice job.
I believe that I gave my best on the course, and that best was good enough to win me overall female for the 50K. So obviously was really proud of the achievement of winning, but even more, I was really proud of myself for leaving it all out on the course and really managing my energy, my fueling, and my emotions out on race day.
If he answers. He better answer, right? Guess what? He's on his run and it's pouring.
Like you said, guys, we have lots of refreshments here.
Guess what?
Come help yourselves. It sounds like I probably bought too much food.
Thank you.
Talking about not enough water. We almost ran out of
So
water.
crazy. I'll call you in just a bit. It's hard for me to hear you, but good job.
We are going to go ahead and jump to first place for the females in the 50K. So at 5 hours and 59 minutes and 30 seconds, coming just under 6 hours, we have Amanda Kamiko. There's your plaque, your Salt Lake Running gift card, and then yeah, if I could get a picture of you, that would be great. Thank you. Good job.
My girls are like,
And we'll get you guys your plaques.
The mom came up to tell me congratulations, and she said that her 2 little girls, as I was coming into the finish line, looked at her and said, "Oh my gosh, she's so pretty." And her response to her little girls were, "Of course, pretty girls can run too." And when she said that, I hit something in my emotions, and I think it stirred up some emotions from being a girl playing on a boys baseball team from age 3 to 18, and then being in the military and being a small female and being in a very male dominated space. And I felt like for a lot of my life that being girly or presenting as, you know, feminine disqualified me from being athletic, or made me feel like I needed to kind of like prove myself to everyone else based on the fact that I am feminine. And it just kind of reminded me that it's super important to make sure that, for one, we protect women in sport and make sure that women feel represented and included in sport itself, and to protect female sports in general. So I thought that moment was really cool and just sat with me and reminded me just that women don't need to make themselves more masculine in order to be valid in their sport or be killer athletes, and that little girls should grow up to know that they don't have to change who they are as a person in order to be accepted. So
okay, so
I love that.
We just wrapped up the super last minute ultra that we signed up for literally 3 days ago. But that was such a good training run for Leadville. Truthfully, like the super hard climbs, I guess the heat and the exposure to the elements definitely added to the difficulty of that race. I think we hit right around, oh my goodness. We hit right around 5,800 gain in a 50K over 30 miles. So pretty steep climbs, but took home this. So very happy, obviously, under 6 hours as well. So that was the goal. That was the overall A goal. So very happy with how that went.
So there are a few things that I feel like I could have improved as far as execution goes for this race. So the first being my shoes and the adjustment of the laces. I basically raced the entire race with my right foot being in quite a bit of discomfort because I tightened the forefoot of the shoe too tight. So I noticed it basically right away, but I didn't want to stop and adjust my shoe because that felt like it took up too much time. But I could have done a better job of allowing space in my foot for foot swell. So especially if you're a mountain runner or a very long distance runner, experiencing foot swell is super normal. So because we're going up in elevation, but then also just time on feet, we're gaining elevation, losing elevation, foot swell is just a part of the game. So we need to make sure that we're adjusting our shoes to fit that. And I did not do that. So I noticed it right away. It was painful. I pushed through, but I definitely could have done a lot better with actually just adjusting my shoe properly before the race. The second thing that I could have done better is just having an extra bladder and then an extra gel flask ready to go at the aid station. So one thing that I'm going to do at Leadville 100%, and we've already planned for this, is actually I'm gonna have a spare vest. That way when I get to aid stations, the aid station crew can already have my vest ready to go for me. So all I have to do, strip my vest, put a new vest on that has all my nutrition, all my water already ready to go. But for this race, I very easily could have had an extra bladder that Brennik could have had filled up for me when I got to the aid station. That way I didn't have to refill. And the same thing with a gel flask. So having the same flask with 6 additional gels already squeezed into the flask, that way I didn't have to kind of like fumble around at all. We did a really great job of keeping all of our aid station stops under 2 minutes at this race, but I think we could have gone even better. It's just something that we could have improved on. And I think because the 50K distance is still short enough to where 5 minutes makes a big difference or 2 minutes makes a big difference, we could definitely have improved in that realm. The last two things are I for sure could have ran a few more of the lower grade climbs at the later half of the race. Because I was able to hit like a 6:12 for 200 meters and I felt like I could have kept going at that pace is an indication to me that I had a lot more fuel left in the tank, which is great because we're training for Leadville, but I've never raced this distance before. So just knowing that makes me think that I for sure could have pushed a little bit more in that later half of the race. I think we did a really great job of managing energy, but I think I was a little bit more conservative than I could have been 100%. And then the last thing being, I think I could have pushed hydration just a little bit more. I think by far, this has been the best execution that I have had for nutrition and hydration, but I think I could have pushed hydration just a little bit more. I only peed once in the race, which I get like race pee shy, like Ironman, every other race that I've done, I don't know why, but that's an indication to me that we could have been even more hydrated. I never felt like I was gonna bonk, never felt dehydrated by any means, but I think we could have pushed hydration just a little bit more in practice. But that is all the things that I feel like we could have executed a little bit better on this race. We can always improve, right? It doesn't matter if you win, you lose, you're middle of the pack, there's always room for improvement. So I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to race this weekend and actually race it to see where my deficiencies were. So obviously I didn't train specifically for the 50K distance, but because we've laid so many bricks for endurance leading up to this race, I had the 50 miler in March, April, I've been training for Leadville 100, I was able to come into this race with confidence that I was going to finish at the very least and do what I felt like it was gonna be my best. This is just such a key for those who are looking to get into endurance of being ready, right? And in order to do well at races, you consistently have to be ready. And I know that if I would have raced a 200-mile race this past weekend, I wouldn't have been as ready as I was for 50K. But because we've laid so many weeks of effort forth, I knew that I was gonna do well going into this race. I obviously wanted to win. That was my goal for this race. But at the very end of the day, I knew I wanted to be able to give my all. So consistency of training is 100% what allowed me to be able to race really well this weekend. Maintaining my strength training regimen and my elevation gain profile in my actual weekly runs also allowed me to race really well this weekend with 6K gain within 30 miles. That's a pretty hilly race. I had the experience under my belt of being able to do those bigger climbs. What I learned about this distance is that for me as an athlete, I could push more than I had anticipated. I think my 50 miler I went into super conservatively because I was so new to ultra. My first ultra was the 50 miler in March, so I had no idea what I was getting into. This race, I knew a little bit more what I was getting into because I've ran this distance before in training, but this race distance taught me so much about my threshold as an athlete and that I'm able to give a lot more than I think I give myself credit for at this like middle of the road distance and definitely the shorter end of the distance for ultra. I think what I've learned about other athletes is that I think a lot of people underestimate the elevation gain in races. It can be super easy to come into a race like this super cocky because it's only whatever 31 miles. But as an athlete who trains the mountains, I can tell you that it's super humbling always to race in the mountains and especially have some big climbs. So I like this distance. I actually would like to do this distance again, I believe. But this is the last race that we're doing before Leadville 100. So if you're interested in doing a 50K, I would definitely recommend making sure to have training in the mountains because you're emulating what you are going to be racing in, and then also making sure that you're incorporating hiking and just more time on your feet than you may anticipate. So like the distance, we'll definitely be back. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Chasing Leadville 100. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week as we get back into the swing of things for training for Leadville 100.